Hey everybody, Gurmy's Coaster Yard here, and in today's episode of Germanator Studios, we are starting off with a little more work on our inter-resort, or I should say intra-resort transit system. Doing some more work on the monorails today. And what we do in this episode is complete the circuits for the red line and the yellow line, also known as lines 1 and 3, on my little paper chart that I drew up. I did a little map of all the monorail lines. Not that that matters. Anyhow, uh, starting things off with the red line, and you can see I started making it go along the perimeter of the park, but then I decided to make it go through that corner of the park. And as you may recall, that will eventually be our future themed section, and I thought it would be cool to have the monorail going through there, so I decided to do that preemptively. That way, um, in the future, no pun intended, we can uh, we can design around that, and we may need to change it or alter it a little bit. But I decided if that's going to work out, it's going to rely on me remembering it, and I can force myself to remember it by building it that way to begin with. So down the line, we may have a monorail going through the middle of the park, or we may not, but that's to be determined. Anyhow, here you can see me putting the red line in a second station in the hub. Um, Eventually, there will only be the one station, I think. I haven't 100% figured out how I want the hub to be yet, because right now we only have two lines going through there, and I sort of looked at my map that I had drawn, and I only have two lines scheduled to go through there. So I think I may change it up a little bit and maybe add a couple more lines just to make the transport hub a little bit more full, or filled out, I should say. But that's stuff we can figure out in the future. Anyhow, you'll notice I'm putting in a station right up here, sort of to the northwest of the hub. Actually, no, this one is northeast. This station here is going to be where the water park is, roughly. We may move the stations, but that's the general area I want to include the water park. And then up here in a little bit, you'll see me veer off and go in the direction of where our zoo is going to be. And I don't know the exact locations of either of those things just yet, um, but just for the sake of planning out the monorail lines, I knew roughly where I wanted them to be, so I figured put I can build the lines out to about where I think the stations will be, and build them. And it's pretty straightforward. You'll notice I put in a blue monorail line right here, that goes from the hub to the zoo, but I decided because the hub and the zoo are so close together, they're basically within walking distance. So if I want to have any sort of transport between the two, I would just make it like a tram, a little shuttle, um, and or people can walk, and I'll just connect the red line to the zoo like I did on my original map. Um, but on that note, I suppose I think I really want to sort of revamp my original design for the transport system, because I'm certain it could be more efficient, and we can make better use of the transport hub. Anyhow, for instance, you can see the red line here goes up to the zoo, and then it sort of cuts back to go to the transport hub. And eventually I will delete the station that it's going into right now, actually do that right here, and just go straight across the hub, because it just makes more sense, uh, considering like the economy, I guess, of the track. It makes the track a little bit shorter, which is always ideal in transportation situations if you can cut down the amount of space required to get from point A to point B. Anyhow, enough rambling on that. Well, not really, because I still have to ramble for a few more minutes, unfortunately. Um, Anyhow, you can see I made a nice wide loop right there. I don't want to have any radiuses that are I should say radii, I think that's the plural, that are too tight on these rail lines, I guess. Uh, I think there are a couple spots in the transport hub where I use a medium curve, but when the train is going to be traveling on the faster side, I wouldn't want it to be going fast around anything less than the widest curve in the game. Um, but that's just nitpicking. It's not like it'll make a difference from a functional standpoint. It's just from a realism standpoint, and an aesthetic standpoint as well. So you'll notice here, I had the stations 5 tiles apart, so 5 tiles in between them, essentially. But I realized everything in the transport hub has 5 tiles between it. But the other station we built in the last episode has only 3 tiles between the two. And I realized since we are not really doing anything special with. Oh, I lost my train of thought. No pun intended. Um, Basically, the station is going to be design wise basically the same as the one we built in the last episode. It may have a different aesthetic look to it, um, but the design of the pathways is going to be the same. And now we're getting back to the middle of the transport hub. So I decided to redo this whole pathway with the ramps and stairs, and I think this is going to be the bane of my existence until it's done. Because what we end up with, I'm still not happy with. In fact, I may cut this footage out, but if I don't, sorry and hello. Anyway, you know what? I'll keep it in just for the learning experience of it. Um, but yeah, uh, this just gets so jumbled up, and for as much space as we have, it just feels like there's not a whole lot to go with. Um, I thought maybe I would want like an upper level that sort of surrounds this space, um, sort of wrapping around it, almost like a shopping mall type of aesthetic, if that makes sense. But I couldn't what everything I came up with felt very congested, and it still does, and you'll see where it does. I think this is sort of the last way I did it, and this is mostly just a filler for function. Anyhow, gotta figure that out, but it's off screen now. And now we are moving along to something I actually am kind of excited about because it's not boring infrastructure, and that is working on our haunted, spooky, whatever you want to call it, area. My initial idea for this, and I think the root for it is still that it is sort of going to be based off of like Salem, and the Salem witch trials. That's more or less just the architectural theme or whatever of the area. It's not going to have like any specific connections to the witch trials or any people. That's just the general theme of it. But it's within, as far as RCT